Gifts from Gertie. I shall begin with what I thought was the end. Although, the ending of our story is far too abstruse for most. You have been warned, please do proceed with caution. The future of the story, both written and in real life, takes place something like this. Gertrude, or Gertie as I call her, is now my lover and muse. I have read that all great authors need such to finish their masterpieces. And it was indeed true, as Gertie has taught me how to live life and love it. Gertie is a gift. Gertrude is my inspiration for success in my novel titled The World's Greatest Love Affair. And for my life which I call the same name. It will be a bestseller in the futuristic year of 1961, Gertie told me so. And at the time our story began, I believed her with all my heart and soul. That's when I learned to believe in myself. I'm eccentric, I will admit it. I'm a writer, so I come by it naturally. Would you mind allowing me to tell you a little about my time with Gertrude Miller? You might know her. She is the adorable little woman who feeds the pigeons in the park off 20th Boulevard and quail in my neighborhood here in Edgewater, Colorado. Well, she used to be that anyway. Gertie and I, her James, have never let time or age difference come between us. The day I carried her to my room in the 19th Street boarding house, she didn't know my name other than Prince Charming. It's James, James Turner, so lovely to meet you, I spoke. She kissed my cheek ever so gently and said, oh my. I didn't know your name, did I? What's in a name anyway? You know I am your Gertie, but it's Miller, Gertie Miller if we insist on being formal. Strangely we had this conversation while both nude in my bed. In May of that year, I had just turned 22 years old and was highly inexperienced. My love, Gertie, will turn 62 years old on November 26th, our nation's first official National Day of Thanksgiving, as President Hoover wants to call it, while the 40 years between us is sometimes apparent. I don't let numbers define us. Thanks to Gertie, the only numbers I have ever worried about are financial. Just organization, really, but that wasn't always the case. I met my Gertie on my way home from work on the longest day of 1931. That summer was a hot one, and I was walking as I had no transportation. I was young and, in those days, worked a day job as a mortician's assistant to pay my bills and support my insidious typewriter habit of pretentious storytelling, before Gertie. My stories were drab and dull, they had no point as I had not experienced life to its fullest. However, I wasn't a quitter. My writing practice was so bad that my landlady Mrs. Phelps moved me into an open room at the end of the hallway so she wouldn't have to listen to my fingers banging the keys of my old Royal all through the night. It seems Mrs. Phelps was always angry with me, as was old man Foster, the mortician. There were stories for me in those acquaintance relationships but nothing to hold a candle to the flame my Gertie has given to me. So, there was no doubt in my mind while strolling through the park that afternoon that I would stop. There she was, the happiest woman in the world. I watched as she filled her tiny hand with seed and called to the pigeons who danced and strutted all around her. My heart melted. So petite and always smiling, she looked my way and winked. What might you be up to, my fine young Prince Charming? She asked. I was struck with a moment of youth. As silly as I felt, I put my right hand on top of my cap and replied. About up to here. I moved my hand back and forth to show her how tall I was. She pleasantly stared at me for a moment, then laughed a full laugh that could have belonged to someone twice her size. I like your style, young gentleman, she said. You remind me of that young fellow in a moving picture I once saw. Rudolph Valentino, yes, that is who you look like. It's the dark dreamy eyes. Tall, dark, and handsome, why you must be someone's greatest love. No, no one thinks of me like that. I'm not married and have no significant other. I reluctantly replied. She hugged me in a friendly manner and said, well, old Gertie will love you as my Prince Charming. I wanted to believe her, although I thought she was pleasantly joking. She kept the dried corn, millet, and peas she fed to the pigeons in an apron that she had tied its strings in a bough that bounced on her backside as she walked. Then she took a seat on the park bench, straightening her cotton dress that was only a frock. But the blue and white checkered pattern was charming. She noticed that I noticed. I don't remember what color her apron was, but I remember that bow as it looked like one that I had once seen on a gift, the only gift I had ever received from my parents when I was just a small lad. And she wore sensible shoes that looked so comfortable. I'm just that kind of guy to notice. As someone who doesn't own a vehicle, I always.
Being the Beaver, I didn't expect to see you here today, Jane said with an air of concern. Tim shuffled inside and replied, well, I hoped you'd have some extra time for me. I know we usually do Thursdays, but it's fine, Tim, I'm free. Let me just put the kettle on, thanks, but I can't stay that long, really, he said, looking down at his feet, and then out the window, staring at a squirrel rampaging down the tree outside. I'm just feeling so out of place today. Some days are like that. For everyone, she said, as she settled into her large brown armchair, and motioned for him to take a seat. It's just that, I don't know how to continue on, as if nothing has happened, as if everything is normal. I feel like people expect me to be calm and rational about all of this, but inside I feel like the world has ended. I want to scream at them, say, what about this is normal to you? What do you see that I don't? I think that's a perfectly rational feeling, Tim, given the circumstances. There's really no right or wrong here, you know, yeah. I guess so. I mean, I know that my feelings on the matter are my own, and it's nobody's business how I feel, but I can't help but feel judged for having this constant rage and just sadness all of the time. Who do you feel is judging you? Jane inquired earnestly. Everyone. Tim spat out, and looked at her with tears in his eyes. My relatives say, get over it. He won. Nothing's gonna change that, and life goes on. In 4 years it'll be the same thing again. And since it's out of your control, you just have to ignore it and worry about yourself. Count your blessings. Things like that. I don't even want to talk to anyone about it, because it's always the same thing. And do you? Do I what? Do you count your blessings, as they say? Honestly, if I hear that phrase one more time, the reason I ask that is that you might have a good result from taking stock for a moment of what things in your life that you are in control of and what things are going right. That way, you might see how you may be able to turn this sadness and rage into something positive, so you can carry on with life without being overwhelmed by this grief. Because it is a form of grief, what you feel, and that doesn't just go away. You have to work through it. What does it matter if things are going right for me, when the whole world seems to be so? He searched for the words, so out of control and messed up. Can you honestly tell me a time that the world didn't feel like that? Jane prodded. Well, no, I mean, I don't know. Things just seem worse now than I can ever remember. I can think of countless examples from history when people probably felt the same, yes, but lines have been crossed that can't be uncrossed. Now I turn on the news and it's just all bad. I go into my accounts, and people say this, say that, and no matter which side I take, someone gets angry at me. I've had to unfriend so many people because of this, and every day I feel more angry and alone. I can see why you'd say that. I think that is a very common problem right now. Can I ask you, is unfriending people making you feel any better ever? No. I have never felt so alone in all my life. Maybe instead of unfriending them, you could just walk away from your phone. Easier said than done. Tim squirmed a bit, but what do you do when those feelings come up? Do you have any methods for shaking it off? I try to remember to shower, eat, he tried, pet my cat. Take out the garbage, things like that. Is that what you mean? Well, yes, sort of. Taking care of yourself and your household are always very important. But more than that, it's good to try a new hobby, or do a simple exercise routine, or even just try breathing techniques, which can be very helpful to get you through something stressful. Some people try writing down how they feel, on paper, so as to get it all out, not let it build up. Yes, I've heard all this before, he said, exasperated. He slouched lower in his chair. Perhaps this time you could give it a try. I know all of this already. It just feels very futile, like trying to plug a hole in a dam with only a pebble, when you know that eventually the dam will burst anyway. Yes, but maybe you could look at it differently. Maybe instead of plugging a hole, you're the beaver who's trying to build the dam in the first place. They always start with just one twig, then two, then three. Before you know it, they moved the whole river just to suit them. Jane smiled broadly and continued, that's how I think of life and getting over bad feelings. You can start by making small changes, and doing even the tiniest of things, in order to achieve some sort of peace with yourself, and better deal with those around you. Even just one small thing a day can make a world of difference in a few months' time. The endless stream of things.